Mesdames et messieurs les participants, bonjour, chers collègues, distingués invités, en vos rangs, titres et qualités, tout protocole observé. Bienvenue et merci d'avoir répondu favorablement à notre invitation à ce webinaire. Je m'appelle Saliou Sall et je suis le coordinateur principal de
And I'm working for the project of capacity building for Africa. Before I start, allow me to invite you to know everyone here. I hope that you will benefit from good hearing and listening conditions.
Nous vous prions de mettre votre microphone en mode muet si vous ne parlez pas. Cependant, il vous est loisible d'activer votre caméra si vous parlez, ainsi que votre micro. Pour votre interprétation, pour votre information, l'interprétation est disponible en anglais, en arabe et en français. Vous pouvez choisir votre langue en cliquant sur l'icône globe au bas de votre écran. En fait, ça ressemble à un globe. Vous pouvez juste cliquer et vous verrez la langue de votre choix. Pour partager des questions et des commentaires,
you can also raise.
Les compileront et les relayeront aux panélistes. Pour demander la parole, vous pouvez utiliser la fonction lever la main ou demander par le biais d'un message dans le chat. Nous vous prions également de parler clairement et lentement afin de permettre aux interprètes de traduire correctement votre intervention. Merci beaucoup pour votre compréhension. Organisé par l'Institut international de l'UNESCO pour le renforcement des capacités en Afrique, UNESCO ICBA, le présent webinaire porte sur le thème suivant: comment adapter la pédagogie transformationnelle pour la consolidation de la paix pendant la pandémie de COVID-19 en mettant l'accent sur la formation des enseignants. Le but de ce webinaire est donc d'engager les pédagogues africains sur l'importance de la pédagogie transformationnelle pour la consolidation de la paix pendant la pandémie de COVID-19 en mettant le focus sur l'importance de la formation des enseignants. Cette rencontre est une des activités du projet dénommé Prévention de l'extrémisme violent et de sa résurgence en pleine crise de COVID-19 à travers l'éducation en Afrique, conformément à l'esprit de l'article 47 et de la NABSA, la nouvelle approche pour la paix et la stabilité en Afrique. Pour traiter de ce thème, nous avons invité 3 éminents panélistes universitaires venus de pays africains différents. Ils sont tous experts du domaine. Il s'agit de Dr Olivia Opéré, maître de conférence au département des fondements de l'éducation à l'Université Kenyatta au Kenya, de Dr Tendai Marova, maître de conférence également au Midland State University de Zimbabwe, du professeur Boubacar Niane, professeur de sociologie émérite au département d'administration et de gestion de l'éducation à la FASTEF, faculté des sciences et technologies de l'éducation et de la formation au niveau de l'Université Cheikh Anta Diop du Sénégal. Mais avant de leur donner la parole, nous allons accueillir Madame la directrice de l'UNESCO ICBA, Dr Yumiko Yokoziki, qui va prononcer l'allocution d'ouverture. Donc, Dr Yumiko, directeur de l'UNESCO ICBA, si vous êtes en position, je vous donne la parole.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Saliou. Thank you very much. It is a great honor and a pleasure to welcome all participants to this online webinar on how to adapt to transformative pedagogy for peace building during the COVID-19 pandemic, focusing on teacher education. My name is Yumiko, and as introduced, I work for UNESCO ICBA, and we have been working together with all your countries and also our excellent partners like Arigato International to work on this teacher development for peace building. This webinar is organized under the project called prevention of extremism and its resurgence amid the COVID-19 pandemic through education in Africa, aligned with the spirit of TICAD 7, Tokyo International Cooperation for Africa Development, and NAPSA, New Approach for Peace and Stability in Africa, supported by the government of Japan. Peace is one of the African Union's priorities. Aspiration number 4 of the Agenda 2063 emphasizes that a culture of peace and tolerance shall be nurtured in Africa's children and young people through peace education. Very important. But sadly, African young people and the children are at the risk of getting involved in violence and extremism in many forms and manifestations. The factors that push and pull young people into extremism and violence are rooted in complex social, political, economic, and educational dynamics. For these reasons, UNESCO's peace-building efforts focus heavily on youth empowerment. There is no better place than higher education and youth organizations to address a large number of young people. Transformative pedagogy has the potential to positively change our schools and the universities by inspiring young people to learn to live together with resilience and peaceful intentions. Due to conflicts in many parts of Africa, as well as due to the COVID-19 pandemic, teachers are now called more than ever to really look at how learning takes place and ensure that it reaches learners in inclusive, meaningful, and relevant ways. It requires addressing not only the curricular areas, but also the emotional and mental stress and uncertainty that the children and young people struggle with and that influence how learning occurs. Transformative pedagogy can support the teachers to conduct learner-centered learning, which helps empowering learners to reflect critically about their reality. This also makes them aware of their individual and collective responsibilities, sympathize with others, and equipped to positively respond locally in a global context. Transformative pedagogy responds to provide the support to reflect on the contextual issues that learners are facing and help building a safe learning environment for dialogue and shaping those issues. This is a virtual sharing and thinking platform which will enhance dialogue, generate evidence on the practice of transformative pedagogy and its roles in preventing violence. Your contribution, your participation is very important because it is crucial in the development of evidence-based practice that can be replicated in schools, universities, teacher training institutions, and youth organizations. I find this very exciting and encouraging. Finally, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the panelists who are participating with us in their busy schedule, participants, as well as to the government of Japan for funding this project, as well as our partners who are always facilitating in an excellent manner, Arigato International and my own colleagues from ICBA. Thank you very much again in advance for the contributions you'll be making to this wonderful webinar. Thank you. Back to you, Saliu.
Merci beaucoup, Yumiko. Merci beaucoup pour cette brillante allocution. Merci beaucoup pour avoir campé le décor de cette rencontre qui entre dans le cadre de la promotion de la paix à travers l'éducation, comme vous l'avez bien rappelé, ainsi que le préconise l'aspiration cadre de l'agenda.
Your microphone.
Je m'excuse, mon micro était en mode off. Donc, merci beaucoup donc, pour cette brillante allocution, Yumiko, et pour avoir rappelé que cette activité rentre dans le cadre de l'aspiration 4 de l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine. Merci également d'avoir insisté sur l'importance de la pédagogie transformationnelle pour la consolidation de la paix dans le contexte de COVID-19 et du rôle crucial de l'enseignant ici. Donc, merci encore.
Thank you
à présent,
again.
Avant de donner la parole à nos panélistes, je vais inviter tout le monde à allumer la vidéo afin qu'on puisse prendre le groupe, la photo de groupe. Donc, prière, allumer votre vidéo pour la photo de groupe.
So again, before I give the floor to the panelists, I ask you please to open your cameras so we can take the photo.
If you are ready, you tell us. Okay.
Yes, I'm ready. If others can also join by turning on the cameras. And I'm taking the first picture now.
Okay.
And then give me a second to take a second one. Sorry. Yes, I think we're okay.
Good. Merci beaucoup, Souchet. À présent, je me tourne vers les panélistes à qui je vais demander de nous proposer des éléments de réponse.
Now I give the floor to the panelists. I'm going to ask them questions. You can use an interactive approach. The participants, as I said before, can also ask their questions. They can raise them in the chat, and they can also choose whom to answer these questions specifically. First, Dr. Olivia Opere. She works at the Department of Educational Foundations at Kenyatta. She holds a PhD in Sociology of Education and a Master of Education degree in Educational Foundations and a Bachelor's of Education degree in Economics. Olivia is an educationist with over 20 years of experience in teaching and participating in various educational programs. Her area of expertise includes interrelated transformative education fields such as peace education, education for sustainable development, and global citizenship education. She is also a trainer of trainers on the use of transformative pedagogy for peace building. She has a strong research interest in peace education. Sorry. I have two questions. Excuse me, I can't listen because someone has opened their microphone. So what are the key elements of the transformative pedagogy?
Is that a question to me?
Hello, I think you are muted, no?
Hello?
I think Salu is muted.
Okay.
Olivia?
Oh, so that's a question to me. All right, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I am humbled to be part of this gathering today, this afternoon. I'm sure it's morning in some countries. So good morning to those who are in the morning session, and good afternoon to those who are in the afternoon session, like myself. In my view, the key elements of transformative pedagogy is the learner-centered nature of this teaching method. The participatory nature that brings on board experiential learning experiences where learners engage horizontally. And the teacher is no longer looked at as the sage, the know-it-all person who stands there in front, like it happened many years ago, and then relays information to the learners, okay? So it requires a lot of teaching and learning activities that seek to change the mindset, that seek to change the behavior of learners so that they can embrace certain values. And in so doing, then we are able to realize peace building. Thank you so much. Was I heard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm done. Thank you, Salut.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Olivier, pour ces
Thank you so much, Dr. Olivier, for
ces
this
questions
response to the question.
Et je pense que les participants ont pris
think
bonne
that
note.
The participants have taken notes and they will proceed to raise their questions or leave some comments. And wait for you to answer them at a later stage.
À présent, je me tourne du côté de Dr. Tendai Marova.
I give the floor now to Dr. Tendai Marova. He will actually talk to us about the
Adapter la pédagogie transformationnelle pour la consolidation de la paix à la formation des enseignants pendant la période de COVID-19. Mais avant de lui donner la parole, une brève présentation. Dr. Tendai Marova est enseignant-chercheur en histoire à Mainland State University au Zimbabwe. Il est également chercheur à l'Université de l'État libre sous l'autorité du Centre de soutien au développement de la faculté des sciences économiques et de gestion. Ses domaines de recherche comprennent le curriculum et la pédagogie, l'enseignement supérieur, la justice sociale, le développement humain, et la théorisation de l'utilisation d'Ubuntu et de l'approche capacitaire. Docteur Tendai, nous vous donnons la parole pour répondre aux questions. Comment voyez-vous la pédagogie transformationnelle pour la consolidation de la paix dans un contexte de pandémie? Over to you.
Over to you, Doctor. Doctor, can you hear me?
Oh yes. Thank you very much for such a humble introduction. I feel honored as well to be in this particular conversation. And good afternoon to you all.
Improve on the level of implementation of our policies in education.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Oh, okay, I'm also still waiting for my slides to be presented there to be shared. But all the same, thank you for this opportunity to be in a conversation that I think clearly suits well of what I am doing as a teacher educator and also as a researcher. When I started the journey of researching and also becoming a teacher educator, I never thought that I would end up interacting at this particular level. And in the conversation, which I've tried to innovatively frame as adapting transformative pedagogy for peace building in teacher education during the COVID-19 pandemic, basically I'm drawing from my experiences throughout my working life as a researcher. As presented there, my name is Marova T. for Tendai. and I am from Midland State University, from the Faculty of Education, where I am housed in the Department of Humanities, Business Development, and Arts Education. My presentation is going to be appear this way. The first thing that I'm going to share with you is a declaration of the purpose of my presentation, and also an argument that I think should guide my conversation. I will also provide my positionality, that is where I'm coming from, what I've been doing, and how that has built onto my understanding of transformative pedagogy, as well as how that is critical for teacher education, particularly so in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I will also provide a brief context of Zimbabwe, so that you also understand the type of experiences that we've been going on as we grapple with curriculum innovations and also curriculum changes over time. I will also try to bring out the intersection that exists between civic education, some call it citizenship education, indigenous knowledge, and also pedagogy in teacher training colleges. So on that note, let me proceed to the next slide, where my discussion now just spells out the aim of this particular presentation, which is to explore the importance of transformative pedagogy for peace building during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the context is very, very specific, in as much as transformative pedagogy is useful even outside the context of the COVID-19. But my argument is that transformative pedagogy, particularly so in teacher education, is actually key for the preparation of both in-service and pre-service teacher trainees for service in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the major reason why I've decided to frame my argument that way is because from the little experience that we have had so far in this journey in which we were experiencing challenges on account of COVID-19, we have noted that most of the African countries were ill prepared for such an eventuality. And as a result, because of that ill preparation, many struggled to cope with the pressure, the tension, as well as how to handle, their various practices in various spheres, and in particular in the sphere of teacher education. So in the next slide, I will now discuss what it means, to me, to be engaged in such a conversation. I'm an educationist by profession. I don't want to call myself a lecturer, as others would want us to be called, or as my job description on my contract says, because to me, a lecturer lectures, he preaches, he doesn't engage with students. I have already moved from that line of thinking to a line of thinking where I think I am more of an educator or a teacher. And the type of teaching that I do is more informed by, critical engagement with learners. I trained in history and religious education studies, and both areas speak more to in the civic education department, where my focus was on citizenship education. And this type of citizenship education was it had just been introduced in teachers' colleges. And of course, from experiences, it had its own challenges, it had its own also opportunities. I managed to harness more on the opportunities, which is why then even my PhD study focused more on citizenship education and human capabilities formation. Soon after, I became also interested, a keen researcher focusing on curriculum and pedagogical issues in higher education, focusing mostly in teacher education and how it contributes to human development as well as social justice, both in education and broadly within the society. So in operationalizing my studies, I always try to make use of broad human development framework, which is also informed and speaks to issues to do with the capabilities formation. But I also am interested in locally develop the philosophies and theories, such as the philosophy of Ubuntu. In that regard, this particular background now has made me get myself in research, connecting, across many areas, such as connecting with youth justice, peace, human development, and also I have been involved in capacity building programs on account of ISBA, and also quite recently on GCED. And it is during these processes that I started realizing that there are quite a number of things which need to be learned by lecturers or teachers in higher education, particularly so those who are involved in teacher education, because the type of teacher education which we operationalize goes a long way to determine not only the type of citizen that we form in a prospective teacher, but also the type of teacher who is going to be interacting with learners in the schools. So on that note, in the next slide, let me try to bring out then what I think is the context of Zimbabwe, dating back to maybe 1980. Soon after independence, Zimbabwe adopted a philosophy that had a socialist orientation. It called the philosophy scientific socialism, which was mostly framed within the Marxist ideology. But the major thrust in education was that one of education with production, where they were saying we want to move away from a colonial system of education, which majorly involved Africans in education that was only theoretical without some practical components. And this in a way was a way of also trying to bring about change within the mindset of citizens, where citizens were supposed to be trained or to be grounded in both theory and also in practice. Over the years, there were piecemeal changes to the curriculum, and these changes were majorly informed by the nation building project, in which even the teaching of history, teaching of religious studies started to take a multi-perspective approach, where historians started to question, historical narratives which were envisaged as bringing out some sort of hegemonic tendencies, where we had single stories to some accounts. So soon after that, in 1999, a commission of inquiry into education and training, popularly known as the Nziramasanga Commission, was tasked to look and inquire into education and training. So it was both looking at education at school level and also at higher education level. And some of the recommendations that came about then started to inform the type of a curriculum that would ensure that we do not only produce academics through our education system, but we also produce skilled manpower. In as much as there was a shift in the recommendations of this particular commission, there were also limitations associated with that. But to that effect, we also saw the coming in of the competence-based curriculum in schools, and also what we call education 5.0 in higher education. Both of these are trying to speak to, a shift from a teacher-centered type of learning to a shift that is placing, the learner at the center of the whole exercise of education. But with that in mind, we should be clear now of what I'm going to share with you in the next slide, where in that particular context, there were missing components in the type of curriculum that was envisaged, because emphasis all along was on curriculum content, and there was little, if at all, there was any emphasis that was placed on the pedagogy part of it, how that curriculum would be then operationalized within the context of the school system or higher education context. So what is the intersection? Is there any intersection between citizenship education or civic education, indigenous knowledge and pedagogy? If we go back to the Nziramasanga Commission, the Nziramasanga Commission for the first time established a connection that exists between what is learned in schools, what is also available as indigenous knowledge, and how this was taught, but with little emphasis on how teaching was going to be undertaken. So that's when now the Nziramasanga Commission recommended that citizenship education should be taught to every citizen going through the school system. That is from ECD level right up to university level. And with that recommendation again came along the adoption of the philosophy of Ubuntu as the bedrock of our education system, starting again from the primary school level right up to university. Like I suggested before, what was missing, what was glaring and missing, what became very apparent to me that as long as we don't address that component, then these recommendations would remain recommendations that are maybe vibrant in nature in theory, but in practice would remain experiencing a teacher-centered type of education. So what has been missing was a paradigm shift from a teacher-centered type of learning where the teacher knows it all and where a learner is regarded as an empty vessel, to a more critical pedagogy, which is more transformative rather than just informative. So it is this element now that we also found missing even in teacher education. But the fact that it's missing in policy documents and things of that nature does not necessarily mean that they are not of the fact that critically change and reflect on the way we teach what we teach. For instance, within the university context, the university where I happen to come from, for every lecturer who is employed, before they start working, we engage them in induction workshops, where we then discuss some of these things, that what does it mean to teach at a is university teaching is popularly known as should start teaching, and what that is needed in order for us to achieve education 5.0, an education system that develops certain skills, that develops certain attitudes and also values amongst the learners we interact with day in and day out. To that effect, To that effect, let me go to my other slide. Next slide, please. Yes. I started envisaging transformative pedagogy for peace in the COVID-19 pandemic context as a critical component, not only in schools, but also particularly so in teacher education. My understanding of this type of orientation, in actual fact, was reinforced. First of all, I was introduced to the language of transformative pedagogy when I interacted with ISPA during where I found it, institution that would change, would also enable us to participate actively as citizens in a democratic context. So I would love to share with you a 2-minute video where I adopted some of the principles, some of the key components associated with transformative pedagogy, but from a context of a global citizenship education, which is also in sync with any other context in which teacher education may be operationalized. Thank you for playing that video, and please listen attentively. The volume is missing.
Pedagogical shifts from conventional to transformative. The nature and goals of global citizenship education promotes a transformative and holistic approach to teaching, and therefore it requires a more dynamic and transformative pedagogy. Global citizenship education observes 6 pedagogical principles. These comprise of pedagogical shifts from conventional to transformative teaching and learning. Dialogue and participation. Create a learner-centered environment where learners and teachers can discuss and learn together. Holistic and interdisciplinary. Increase relevance of education by incorporating real-life scenarios into learning. Multimodal. Engage students holistically, the mind, the heart, and the body through different learning strategies. Values formation. Teaching global citizenship education should not only focus on learning about facts, but also promote the core values and help learners internalize them. Critical empowerment. Global citizenship education aims to enable learners to critically respond to situations and take action. Applicable and relevant. Introducing relevant knowledge and skills enables learners to apply what they have learned to their daily lives. Above all, it is important for the teachers to utilize the 6 principles and play the role of facilitators in their classroom.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing with us that particular video. Thank you. Once again, thank you. So from my understanding of transformative pedagogy, if it is going to be truly transformative and not only informative, should speak to the 6 principles that I also learned about when I was dealing with, global citizenship education. I'm not saying these principles, I only learned about them when I was doing global citizenship education. I only took advantage of that small clip because of its availability. But I also learned about these when I was inducted into transformative pedagogy. And I see, teacher education as a critical component now that could be useful in developing teacher material that is able to operationalize in a transformative manner any school curriculum, because when we talk of now transformative pedagogy, it doesn't mean that the content itself is no longer important. It is important, but then how it is operationalized becomes very, very critical. Teachers should not, lecturers should not be, lecturers should desist from being called lecturers, and they should desist from lecturing. Because if you look at principle number 1, there should be dialogue, there should be participation. And you can't facilitate dialogue and participation when you're still in the lecturing mode. You need to engage with your learners. So ultimately, what I'm observing is that teacher education needs to apply the 6 principles of transformative pedagogy in their teacher training if they are going to effectively prepare student teachers for their role in the COVID-19 pandemic. And in actual fact, that paradigm shift in terms of our thinking, our mindset, that we are lecturers, I'm sure should also help us, should be worked around so that as our mindset also shifts from lecturing, getting into teaching, into facilitators, it will then be easy for us to engage with the transformative pedagogy in a more useful way. On that note, I think I have come to the end of my presentation. Let me just check whether I still have something there. Yes, if indeed come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening attentively, and over to you, Chairperson.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Tandai Marova.
Thank you, Dr. Tandai Marova. Thank you for sharing your opinion as a lecturer and as a teacher, as well as a researcher. Thank you for telling us how the Zimbabwe system, education system works, as well as the discipline and the civic work, and a system that changed from information to transformation, and where peace has a great importance. Thank you so much for your intervention. The participants will take part and ask you some questions later on. Now, let me go back to Dr. Olivia Opere, who responded to the most important questions that were asked. And now,
are you with us?
Are you here?
Olivia?
Yes,
Olivia?
I am. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My apologies for just responding to the question that was asked. I think I listened more to Salou in French, and so I thought he asked me just to share my understanding of what transformative pedagogy is. Yeah, once again, I want to say I'm really glad to share my experience, to share what the situation in Kenya is to some extent, as far as transformative pedagogy for peace building is concerned, especially during this time of COVID-19 pandemic. I want you to join me in just reflecting on the paradigm shift in teaching and learning methodologies. Just take a moment to think about 20 years ago, 50 years ago, what teaching methodologies were we using? And what is different now in our education systems? What are the different learning and teaching experiences? How about the practices? To what extent has this changed? And let's think about this in our contexts. How about the teaching and learning methods? Think about the use of a blackboard. In fact, we refer to it as a blackboard because indeed it was black. So the shift from that to more technologically advanced methods, all this has happened. How about the values that are being cultivated and nurtured through the current education systems? there is focus on value-based education much more than ever. The processes of teaching, the resources that are put in place. And how about the modes of assessment? All this has shifted. All this has changed. And as teacher educators, there's need for us to make a difference. There's need for us to change so that we are compliant with the changing trends. The technological advancements has influenced content delivery in a big way. To some of us, it's more difficult to deliver content because we were used to what I refer to as yellow notes, certain notes that we write once and we keep using them over and over again. But now there are opportunities to use technology to make sure teaching and learning is more interactive. Teaching and learning is even more interesting and more engaging for the learner, so that there is a true change of mindset. And that's what we really looking forward to. So I am thinking that there's a change from a fragmented method of teaching to a more holistic pedagogy, a pedagogy that looks into the emotional, that engages the emotional, engages the ethical, and all the aspects of the learner. A pedagogy that is not just about the teacher and is not just about examination, it's not just about the cognitive. So there's a change from the vertical, and interactions in our classrooms are more horizontal. Of course, I'm sure as I'm talking, somebody must be thinking, is this the reality in certain settings? This, of course, varies depending on different contexts. But what we must realize as teacher educators, that this is a trend. This is the direction the world is taking. And if therefore we do not change, then we will be left behind. So we are looking at content delivery that is more transformative and not transmissive from the teacher to the learner. The learner looked as, like my colleague Marova said, as an empty vessel that just requires to be filled with content. It doesn't matter whether they like it or not. In fact, I wonder whether as teacher educators, we stop to think of, do our learners even enjoy the learning sessions? Do they enjoy the classroom environment? Do they feel accepted? And especially during this period of COVID-19, when they are facing real challenges of relatives dying, challenges of relatives sick in hospital, do we as teacher educators stop to really try and emotionally engage our learners so as to create a comfortable learning environment where the difficulties that they are processing will not hinder the learning process? And so I am thinking that transformative pedagogy really just entails learner-centered teaching methodologies. Teaching methodologies are relevant, appropriate, and close to my heart is the creativity that comes with it. That you are required to think outside the box. You know, we have interacted with this saying for many years, but it's real, that you really need to think of what is it I can do differently. Experiences that will stick to the learner's memory. There's need to focus on all the learning domains. Even the Bloom's taxonomy has changed and more learning domains have been brought on board. So long as the days when we focused on the cognitive alone, behavior change is very, very critical. We need to recognize the diversity of our learners, the learners in our contexts, even the tribal differences, the cultural differences. Because making certain statements as a teacher, you may find yourself presenting offensive statements because you're not context sensitive. You do not know the cultural backgrounds of your learners. You do not know your learners in a manner that you understand what they're going through, and in a way that you need to resonate with the experiences. Collective experiences, connected learning, collaborations, group discussions, to put it in a simple way, is also critical. Because in the process then, teamwork is nurtured. In the process then, values such as respect, mutual respect for one another will be enhanced. Because in a group discussion, for instance, one has to take turns in presenting their views. And so they have to respect one another's views. And in this way, it's very important, therefore, to even have what is referred to as classroom contracting. So that classrooms have contracts. How are we going to interact as learners in this space? What are the do's and don'ts? How do we respond to others' feelings? And in all this, then conflict is minimized because the learners ensure, therefore, that they are sensitive about other people's feelings and they do not make statements that will offend the other learners. And this applies to the teacher too. Can I be heard?
Hello?
Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So transformative pedagogy enables deep learning. Enables learning that enhances critical mindsets. A learner questions that they want to know, and they're given the space to be able to question and get a deeper understanding of concepts. Not forgetting the learning the communities of practice that come with this, that now more than ever, it is possible to have exchange experiences with other learners in almost every part of the world. Now, I want to just let you into a study I conducted in the Kenyan context, targeting secondary schools, just to get to understand to what extent was transformative pedagogy, or is a transformative pedagogy being used to achieve peaceful coexistence. You may be aware that the schools in Kenya, and especially the secondary schools, have had a lot of issues to do with school violence. Some of it that even leads to death, burning of schools, and so on. And so I thought it was important to find out what role does transformative pedagogy play in just ensuring peaceful coexistence is realized. And it came out clearly that not many teachers were using methods such as group discussions, methods that encourage teamwork, methods that encourage, as I mentioned earlier, mutual respect for one another being practiced, methods that encourage togetherness. Like, let us work at this. This is an assignment. We need to do it as a group. And so we are a family and we need to, take care of one another's concerns. It emerged that most teachers preferred lecture method of teaching, note-taking, dictating notes so that learners can write. And it didn't matter whether they have understood what they're writing or not. I conducted classroom observations, and it was clear that some of the teachers were not connected to their learners emotionally, not connected to their learners in a way that they understood their experiences. And what this means, therefore, is that there's a lot we need to do as teacher educators to ensure that we shift, make different decisions, that we are in sync with the 21st century trends. And now I want you again to reflect on the teaching approaches, and particularly in the 21st century, in relation to the emerging issues. And very key to this webinar is health crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Think about the social fragmentations, even the identity-based conflicts that have, come out very, very clearly during this period of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we have also experienced togetherness. We have seen countries come together to share vaccines, which is a very good thing. But we have also seen, certain segments of the society suffer the digital divide. And as teacher educators, we need to stop and reflect, stop and figure out how we will deal with not just millennials, but pandemials as well. We are dealing with learners that have been locked up in certain spaces. They've been locked up and they cannot live their life in a normal way. And this causes tension, this causes conflict. So as teachers, we must be innovative and figure out ways of how then we can manage our learning environments to be able to deal with learners in these situations. So tackling the 21st century realities calls for, as I've mentioned earlier, a shift in the global education agenda. And now there's a trend in mainstreaming several concepts into the curriculum. Global citizenship education, like my colleague Dr. Tendai mentioned, education for sustainable development, peace education, and so on. And there's also a change from the physical world to the digital world. We are no longer talking of classrooms in some settings, we are talking of Zoom rooms. The digital power has taken control. And that means that there are those who are not able to access the digital space and are therefore lagging behind. We are moving from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. And hence the need to reinvent, the need to creatively identify new ways, new learning narratives, and new spaces where our learners can be able to excel so that we have enhanced learning outcomes. The teaching platforms have changed, and I want to share the experience in my university. This, I'm sure, happened globally, that the learning institutions closed abruptly. There was no notice. There was no indication this was about to happen. So suddenly, there was a disease known as COVID-19 pandemic, and there was need for institutions to close down to be able to manage it. That was the mitigation measures put in place. And so, like any other institution, we were affected. Our learners went home, and we quickly got into a program of retooling faculty, retooling the lecturers to ensure that they had the digital skills that they required to continue teaching online. Many of us rejected this. Many of us embraced it. But clearly it was evident that there was no turning back. The way to go was to ensure we had the digital skills, we had the tools to enable us to engage online. And yes? Hello?
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
You can wrap up in a few minutes.
Yes. Yeah, so it was no longer business as usual, and there was need for change. Now, this is more or less just the change that needs to take place, strengthening of the social emotional learning of status of learners, focusing on soft skills much more than the cognitive, using the tool-based approach so that the learners are learning to do other than mastery of content just for the sake of it. And all this calls for the shift that I've talked about. I want to quickly move on to these pictures.
Yes, if you can wrap up in 3-4 minutes. That would be great.
I want to wrap up in 1 minute, actually, Salu.
Great.
Yeah, so in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic, we still engage learners in training sessions. And as you can see from these pictures, we were trying to make use of learner-centered pedagogy, where learners come up in groups and discuss concepts, especially based on peace building. And this ensures that there is a change of mindset, ensures that the experiences that they garner as they interact with one another can be used later in their own contexts. And so away from the teacher-centered pedagogy, it's important as teacher educators for us to embrace methods that focus on how learners engage and how the change of behavior can be encouraged. And Salu, I think I will stop there. And I want to say in Swahili, asanteni sana. Thank you.
Asante sana, Dr. Olivia. Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation très importante.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this important intervention. It was really very relevant and important. And it's good that you highlighted this pragmatic need for change. You talked about the changes on the teaching and learning process. And this is important. You also talked about the evolution of the methodology of teaching. It is horizontal and transformative because it affects positively the learner. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for showing the difference in the quality. All of these key elements help respond to the question that we raised here on how to adapt the transformative pedagogy for peace building. Thank you so much, Dr. Olivia, really for this presentation. I will give the floor now to Professor Boubacar Niane. He's Professor of Sociology, Emeritus in the UCAL and FASTEF. in the Department of Education, Administration, and Management. He has more than 30 years of experience in the field of orientation and the management of the development in education. And he's also an inspector at the Faculty of Science and Techniques of Education and Training. And he also focuses on innovation, and he teaches in sociology of education, management of change, and innovation. He also set up and coordinated the GIRES laboratory. He previously held many design and coordination functions, also on administration. But since December 2018, he has been chairman of the scientific committee of PASEC. He's gonna talk to us today about the transformative pedagogy for the prevention of violence. During this presentation, he's gonna answer the following questions. What do you think about the role of the universities and colleges in this process? What are your recommendations to enhance the impact of transformative pedagogy? And especially during the of COVID-19. Please, you can proceed now with your presentation. Hello. Thank you, Salu. I'm really honored to participate to this webinar and to share with you some reflections. Maybe there are more stops of reflections. I will try to answer the questions at 3 stages, 3 moments. First, why? And then how regarding violence in universities in Senegal and its prevention. So we're trying to use our and then consequently, I'll be able to answer the questions. As for the second stop or the second axis of a response, it's what are the provisionary responses. You know, we are still suffering from the COVID pandemic, even if the conditions have evolved somehow. And even if we highly wish to overcome the pandemic, we should really learn from it. And I will share with you some of the lessons.
Et troisième moment de ma réponse, ce sont une esquisse de stratégie.
For the third axis, it's the strategies that are helpful to respond to this crisis. The next page, please, José.
D'abord, donc, on va essayer de partager la violence dans l'espace universitaire.
We're gonna try to talk about violence in Senegalese universities. When I talk about campuses or universities, it's the same University of Dakar that
plusieurs universités. Il y a l'université de Dakar.
Not only the University of Dakar, but also all of the universities in Senegal, whether it's Bombay or Dakar. So I'm not referring to a specific university.
Quels sont les éléments déclencheurs et la récurrence de ces...
I'm going to start talking about the triggers. What are the elements that are triggering and causing the recurrence of violence? Fortunately for us, violence is not related to specific phenomena. When violence is triggered, it actually has a relation with demands for improvements in living or improvement in the study conditions.
c'est lors
As for the second source
ou des organisations
of triggers, it's actually the designation or the appointment of representative student organizations. So we actually see some triggers whenever we choose new student organizations, because this tackles important issues like positions of powers and advantages, not only on the pedagogic universities, but also social campuses.
Pouvoir gérer leurs activités d'animation culturelle.
But it's highly important to choose student organizations to handle the affairs of students and represent them.
Il y a un champ de connotation extrêmement important au niveau de quand il y a ces désignations, quand il y a ces élections-là.
And that's why we face a lot of confrontations whenever these organizations are designated.
Une récurrence de la violence dans l'espace universitaire.
So here we highlight the recurrence of violence. It keeps on happening during these times, and because of these triggers, the consequences are injuries, death cases, and also deterioration of equipment and materials. Another consequence is the suspension of organizations, whether they are the student organizations or other ones, and also detentions. So we also witnessed the detention of students, or even temporary and permanent exclusions or terminations. So all of these are consequences of the violence in the Senegalese universities, and the consequences are actually reaching the teachers, students, and also their parents. It is highly important at this stage to make sure that the university is a place where there's a confrontation of ideas and not confrontation between students. So we're not talking about a physical confrontation, but rather an intellectual one. And every year there's practically a disruption of the universal year, the university year, excuse me. So because of this trouble, the learning process of students is actually disrupted. And let's take the example of the University of Dakar. That is, we can move please to the next page. So as you can see, there's a mural fresco or a wall painting. This is a piece of art. Maybe you can't see it clearly, but you can read on it. Arm yourself with science. So in other words, thanks to knowledge and science, you will be able to fight. So let's not resort to violence, but rather stop violence as it's written. And at the bottom of this wall painting, you can read, I will translate, it is in peace that everything is possible. So this means that without peace, we will not be able to accomplish. Without peace, we will not be able to accomplish. We need peace to reach our purpose. It's highly important for students, their parents, the community, and also teachers to be aware that violence needs to be stopped, and especially in universities, we should actually foster dialogue, innovation, and peace. I would also like to share with you the lessons that are learned Next slide, please.
En disant, est-ce que la pandémie COVID-19 n'est pas une opportunité? Bon, bien sûr que c'est un choc.
Is it really provocative to say that COVID-19 is an opportunity? Maybe a lot of people would be shocked to hear this, but this constraint can actually be an opportunity, isn't it? This is one of my hypotheses, and I'm going to talk to you about this one. During the pandemic, we could have noticed and maybe that joined or confirmed this. I think that the pandemic was a sort of catalyst for maximizing the main functions of the university.
Pandémie. La recherche.
So again, during the pandemic, the research and
a été beaucoup plus visible.
The results have been very efficient and very fruitful. So there has been some sort of motivation. This is it. A motivation to find answers to this pandemic.
De réflexion sur la pandémie au niveau anthropologique,
sharing a lot of reflections and insights on the pandemics, and also the economic aspects. There has also been an intra and inter-university cooperation and solidarity. So a lot of the faculties have shared their experiences together.
Mais aussi entre universités.
Inside the university, and also in between different universities. So as I said, it's intra and inter-university cooperation and solidarity. There is a university in Senegal where all the teaching is actually remotely. So
des étudiants qui ont déjà eu
it's a remote teaching and learning process.
Ce modèle d'université.
And this is not a new model for us. A lot of graduates have benefited from this type of teaching and learning.
Des modifications ou des changements substantiels, c'est-à-dire que l'enseignement à distance.
So again, there has been some substantial benefits from this. Again, it's not the first time for the students of this university to use the remote learning. They have been using platforms adapted with this type of distant learning.
Où l'enseignement à distance n'était pas très développé. Et donc, il y a eu des réticences au départ.
And at some points, the platforms were not developed, so we also worked on it.
N'était pas trop favorable à l'enseignement.
A lot of the colleagues were not fan of this type of remote teaching.
On même revendiqué ça quand on a voulu.
And even some claimed their right to reject this or to stop this.
Tout le monde reste à la maison pour faire l'enseignement à distance ou bien.
And some students actually love the idea of staying at home and learning remotely, but specifically on these questions, whether for the teaching or even for the evaluations, we used a new methodology using the platforms, and we developed it.
Sur cette opportunité dont je parlais,
and again, on this point that the COVID is an opportunity, I should shed light and focus on some findings. We had we had the chance of repositioning the virtual University of Senegal, thanks to the remote and distant learning and teaching. So it can actually be an input that's extraordinary for the teachers and the students. Excuse me, but I can hear one of the microphones are on.
Après la pandémie, la période,
after the pandemic,
les enseignements apprentissages en ligne vont être une réalité. Et il faudrait
So
maintenant...
after the pandemic, we understood that the remote teaching and learning process is a reality that we have to accept. We only needed COVID-19 to shed light on it. And I believe that the university and all universities in Senegal were resilient.
Accepté ou a reçu un choc, a pu rebondir pour pouvoir continuer à se développer parce que, rappelons-le, même si
so let's all remember, even if university has faced some challenges, and even if it closed for a specific time period, we can say that again.
Je sais qu'il y a une équipe de collègues qui travaillent.
So we can say that the team that's working on everything that we learned from the pandemic is amazing. I'm gonna try to talk with you now about a perspective overview. So let's all remember that all my previous colleagues are back. And they have talked about the transformative pedagogy. Its goal is to value the latent resources in the learners through effective participation in the teaching learning process. So we actually need an effective and efficient participation. One of my colleagues said that he was not a lecturer, but rather a moderator, because he interacted a lot with his students. So here I shed light on the importance of the participatory teaching learning process. And it's also a question of ethics and an ethical reflection for peace building and resilience. So starting from this goal, I should ask myself, which strategy can we conceive in order to respond to the question that was raised by Salou? And here I take the leverage effect. I mentioned the leverage effect. I can say that the lesson learned is that we should produce a leverage effect of dissemination. So find me a point of support, and this way I can make my strategy work. So here I can use my point of support as the Senegal and the universities in Senegal, and think about changing the transformative pedagogy. How can we do that? We can actually build on 2 points. I will come back to this. So how are we going to do this? Why are we going to do this? We can use the platforms for the remote teaching and learning. To advance our strategies, first, we should make sure that all teachers are able to adapt to the 6 stages of the transformative pedagogy. So this is the first step. We should disseminate the 6 key stages of transformative pedagogy in online and face-to-face teaching and learning processes. First, the motivation. There should be a moment of motivation. So the students must be motivated. The second stage is exploration. The third one, dialogue. Fourth one is discovery, then reflection, and finally action. All 6 stages require a dialogue, a sharing of experience, and an interaction between the students and the teachers. This is an understanding, this is a dialogue that can help foster our purpose and that help foster an environment that's peaceful, away from violence, where we can share our opinion and have a dialogue in the universities. So I was talking about points of support. I was talking about a leverage effect. Why did I choose these 2 points? Because the university and because the campus of science and information technology is one of the faculties that actually teach or develop their teachers. Excuse me, the voices are intertwined. I can't hear the speaker because someone has opened their microphone.
Les enseignants, les élèves inspecteurs, les élèves professeurs soient sensibilisés à cette démarche.
So the teachers and the learners should be made aware of the methodology of transformative pedagogy. We should practice this between generations, so everyone should be acquainted with the transformative pedagogy, and also the university. Also at university, the teachers are working remotely online, and the steps of the transformative pedagogy will help them to make sure that the students are interacting between each others, with each others, and also with teachers. And this is how they can reflect on development. What is this effect? This is the leverage effect I'm talking about. This is what we should be producing for future learners and teachers. We are going to familiarize them with this methodology. It is highly important to be successful. So it's a constructive interaction or sharing. So this should answer the question that was raised by Salu. And maybe while we wait for other questions, this is my opinion on the strategy. This is the leverage effect. It's a small action that can be amplified in order to have extraordinary results and consequences at a later stage in the education system and in the teaching and learning process. Thank you so much. I give the floor to Salu again. If you have any questions, please do raise them in the chat. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you for this brilliant presentation whereby you gave us an insight onto the violence environment in Senegal. And thank you for specifying that this can actually be cured. Thank you for the optimistic note that you gave us regarding COVID. So it's not only a constraint, but rather an opportunity. Thank you for this positive note. We should actually be very optimistic. You also shared your opinion. You also talked about the leverage effect. It was really encouraging. This metaphor can only give us hope. And thank you for providing clear explanations on the transformative pedagogy. You also join the philosophy that was shared by Dr. Marova. So I really think that these presentations can be gathered or brought together.
Et vous allez revenir plus amplement sur tout cela avec plus ample
the chat on both presentations. So I encourage all the participants to ask questions, and José
écrit ont trouvé réponse. on peut permettre aux participants d'utiliser le micro, d'allumer le micro et de poser directement leurs questions ou de partager en tout cas leur point de vue et observation. Merci encore, professeur Nian. Merci beaucoup, docteur Marova. Merci beaucoup, docteur Olivia. Et à vous la parole, Jérusalem José, pour les questions et commentaires.
Thank you, Salou.
Merci beaucoup, Salut. J'ai quelques questions que je voudrais.
Is for Dr. Marova, and the question says, how do this transformation be relevant, especially in the context of the pandemic? And there are also another question, Dr. Marova, for you, and it's about the indigenous knowledge. And the question says, what type of indigenous knowledge are appropriate for civic education or peace education? And how do you incorporate indigenous knowledge in the curriculum? And the person is also asking us to share your experience in relation to integrating indigenous knowledge in the curriculum. And I have another question, and this is directly for Olivia. It says, indeed, there is a challenge of supporting inner peace during the pandemic and all the ongoing challenges. And how do you think we can support inner peace in our learners? These are the questions that I have. After that, I will come to the second ones, which needs more reflection. Then. Over to you, Dr. Marova.
Well, thank you very much for that. Those questions, the set of questions, they're quite insightful questions, very relevant also for the discussion here. The first thing that I want to acknowledge is that when we talk of indigenous knowledge systems, rather, we are talking about a complex, set of ideas, values, beliefs that, embrace not only what is known about the environment or social power, including the justice system, or even the cosmology, that is the spiritual being of people. We are talking about practices, values, and also ways of knowing. This is quite a complex. That's why I would rather go for indigenous knowledge system rather than just indigenous knowledge. But then the question is, how do you pick on the various, indigenous knowledge systems or knowledges that exist within the system, which fit into either citizenship education, into history, or any other type of teaching? Well, it depends on what you are teaching, the topic that you're addressing, or the skills that you want to develop, or the values that you want to develop. And because IKS has all these things ingrained, embedded within it, it's up to the teacher, it's up to the learners to pick on what best addresses issues that they will be engaging with. And the most important thing there is that IKS is context-based. It is based within a certain specific geographical context, which makes it easy now for learning to take place, because if you learn from your own context and then apply in other contexts, learning becomes very, very easy. And from an epistemic justice perspective, if we use what learners already know, it then becomes more empowering. It is a decolonial way of trying to look at things. So I think that places indigenous knowledge systems at a better place to use, especially when you train teachers who are going to fit into various geographical settings within their communities. I am not sure whether I've comprehensively addressed your concerns there, the three of them, but I think that's what I can say for now. Thank you very much for the questions otherwise. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marova. And I think Dr. Olivia and Professor Nian can also add if they have something to say, but I will leave the floor for Olivia to address her question. and also if she has something to add on the question raised for you.
Thank you. Yeah, Musalim, I think that question has been well answered by Dr. Tindai. I want to then try and respond to the question on how do we achieve inner peace. Some noise. How do we achieve inner peace within our learners? My understanding of inner peace is a deliberate effort to embrace calmness. And it emanates from an in-depth understanding of oneself, self-awareness, that you understand your beliefs, you understand your weaknesses, you understand your likes and dislikes. And so it's very important to take learners through activities that will make it possible for them to be aware of themselves. And there are numerous activities that enable the learners to reflect on themselves and get to really know who they are, what are the weaknesses that they have, what are their contexts like, and how is this likely to affect how they relate with others. So back to classroom environments that encourage activities, classroom environments that encourage interactions. And so it will be possible for learners to really have a deep understanding of who they are using those activities. I hope I've responded to that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Olivia. And I have also another question, and it seems for the three of you, but I will give the floor for Professor Nian to reflect first. And Professor Nian, the question says, do you think that transformative education is visible and of a great benefit, or it is an alternative that's imposed by the circumstance of the pandemic? And the other question says, do we consider transformative education as negative, or do we consider transformative education failing when it lacks application? And Professor Nian, maybe you reflect first on these two questions.
Merci. Non, je pense que la pédagogie.
No, I think that the transformative pedagogy cannot be a failure. The problem in relation, of course, to where I work, Senegal and countries where I work, it is a lack of knowledge. Actually, people are not well aware of the transformative pedagogy, and this doesn't allow the improvement of a collaboration. So we need a comprehensive collaboration in order to avail the adequate equipment for teachers. There is FAB platform in the Faculty of Science and Technology that is related to the studying online. And many trainings are being held with teachers who are well trained, and it is an online training. So for ICBA, it will be really important to collaborate or to build a partnership with these kinds of institutions to avail the resources related to the transformative pedagogy. Not only to facilitate the learning techniques, but also to develop this non-violent spirit and tolerance, and teach students how to be responsible, as well as to engage more. These resources must be shared by the ICBA to recognize the fact that, yeah, maybe the pedagogy is not well developed in Senegal, and we call it the university pedagogy. Yes, they are teachers taking part in them. But it is not a passive pedagogy, but an active one where the student is in the heart of the process of learning. In light of the transformative pedagogy, yes, that's it.
Redmi, can you put your microphone off, please?
I'm in Jerusalem.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Marita.
I just wanted to emphasize that it's transformative pedagogy is not a walk in the path. It requires, a critical reflection. It requires self-examination on the part of the teacher, particularly. And it also requires a lot of effort in terms of planning for the lessons, developing the teaching material, etc., etc. And the reason why I was saying the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic found us, unprepared for this eventuality. It's because I had a sense that we had not even started moving away from, traditional modes of teaching. But when we start operationalizing transformative pedagogy, especially informed by those 6 principles, which I tried to share with you, where our teaching is dialogic, it is holistic and interdisciplinary, it is multimodal, it is also, there is applicability of what we'll be teaching, critical empowerment, values formation. When all those are embedded within our pedagogical practices, you would realize that it is easy to shift from one mode of operation to another. Multimodality requires appealing to, multiple senses, all the senses, for the formation of a whole person. So if that is understood, we start working ourselves towards that eventuality. And we should be prepared to move out of our comfort zone. That is what we call transformation. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you, Dr. Marova. Jose, do you have any question on your hand?
Jerusalem,
yes.
I've just read that. Yeah, I've just read the question that was seeking to understand what are the indicators of inner peace.
Yes, I just got those questions also. If Jose doesn't have any question, we'll come back to those questions.
Okay.
Because there are also different questions or similar questions. Jose, do you have any question?
Il faut absolument que vous cherchiez.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
Please proceed, Jose.
Yes, thank you, to give the floor to me.
Mr. Diallo, please put your microphone off unless you want to say something to the panelists. Okay.
Okay, so I was saying that there are some additional questions that have just popped up in the chat. But I would like to start from some questions that were highlighted at the very beginning. Yeah. I would like to start from some questions that were highlighted at the very beginning. By Nora, she wanted to know. Yes. She said that with the advent of COVID-19, the learner needs and interest has changed, and the pedagogy should follow this trend. Then she was asking, what is essential, to respond to these constantly emerging needs. So now, three more questions that are currently in the chat are related to transformative pedagogy itself. Yes, the first question is wanted to know which are the characteristics of transformative pedagogy, and in what extent it differs from reflexive type of pedagogy. Yeah, and another question also related to transformative pedagogy is to know what is being transformed when we talk about transformative pedagogy. What is being transformed? Is it teaching? Is it teaching, learning, methodology, techniques, content, what? So this question also is raised. Some more comments are related to whether we will share the resources or the video, the record of this webinar. Yeah. Yes, this will be shared.
Yeah.
Now I would like to give the floor to our professors to the questions. Yes. Thank you.
Can I respond to the first question, Jerusalem?
Yes, please, Olivia.
Yeah, I think the role of the teacher has changed. And in addition just to content delivery, the teacher provides psychosocial support as well. So to be able to address the learner's needs that has changed, like one of the participants has mentioned, there's need for the teacher in the current situation to embrace their role as much more of a provider of psychosocial support, to an extent that it will not make sense to start off a learning session before a teacher engages with the learners emotionally, getting to understand the learners and whether they're emotionally, in addition to other ways, ready for the lesson. So what is important here, what I need to emphasize, is the role of the teacher today has changed from just being delivery of content to doing much more than that. And then what is being transformed here? I think we are talking about transformation in terms of changing our teaching methodologies, changing our ways of interacting with learners. And in the process of doing this, we'll be effecting a change of mindset in, using these transformative pedagogies, using methods of teaching that are interactive. I've said this over and over again, I'm sorry. Then we enable a change of behavior of learners. And so it's a whole holistic approach to this, to the change that is required, to the transformation that is required. So it's not just about the teaching methods, it's the teaching methods that will enable the learners to look at issues in different ways, that will enable the experiences that they embrace to be different, the manner in which they interact with other members of the society, for instance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Olivia and Dr. Marova or Professor Nian, if you want to add something.
I think Dr. Olivia has addressed that concern quite well. Transformative pedagogy is a change of practice on the part of the teacher, which then leads to the transformation of the learners themselves. and the transformation of the communities, because once the learners are transformed, then even the societies, the communities in which they operate also become transformed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marova. Professor Nian?
Oui, pour répondre à la question posée par la collègue Nora, que je salue, Nora de l'Algérie, je pense qu'il y a un besoin. Je dirais même plus qu'un besoin, il y a une exigence qui est apparue avec la pandémie, c'est l'autonomisation ou l'autonomisation des apprenants, des élèves, des jeunes dans les process d'enseignement-apprentissage. Je pense que ça, c'est fondamental et la pédagogie transformationnelle peut répondre à cette exigence-là. C'est devenu, je pense que, même pas l'autonomisation des étudiants ou des élèves, mais même des enseignants. Il faut que les gens apprennent, je ne dis pas être indépendants, mais autonomes pour pouvoir collecter les ressources éducationnelles, interpréter ces ressources éducationnelles qui sont disponibles un peu partout maintenant et pouvoir se former avec la facilitation d'un professeur qui n'est pas là pour transmettre, mais pour aider. De la transmission. Et donc, cette exigence d'autonomisation, elle est importante. Deuxième aspect, je pense que la pédagogie transformationnelle, c'est aussi bien le processus d'enseignement-apprentissage que le contenu. Parce que, bon, si on ne contextualise pas le contenu, si on ne prend pas en compte le contexte local ou le contexte local, on va avoir des difficultés. Donc, ce n'est pas simplement au niveau des processus, mais c'est aussi au niveau du contenu. Les deux doivent être de pair. Hein. On ne peut pas faire de la pédagogie transformationnelle sur les aspects simplement procéduraux en oubliant le contenu. Je pense que c'est les deux aspects dont il faut tenir compte. Merci.
Thank you very much, Professor Nian. And I have also a few questions on my hand. And for the sake of time, maybe I will just read the questions and one of you can respond to that. And the question says, I think before the lecturers or teachers adopt this transformative pedagogy, the stakeholders should create an environment suitable for them to adjust the new form. So the question is on how the stakeholders can also create the suitable environment for the teachers and educators so that they can use a transformative pedagogy. And there is also a question in relation to the learners inner peace, and it says, how can the teachers or lecturers tell that the learners have obtained inner peace? And how do we also deal with the issue of mental health for staff and students, especially due to the pressure arising from the virtual teaching and learning with the limited skills and resources available? So these are questions that you can reflect on. So Dr. Olivia, Dr. Marova, Professor Nian, do you want to reflect on this?
Yes, Jerusalem. I could say this in response to what are the indicators of inner peace? How do we feel that learners have attained inner peace? When there's conflict in a classroom situation, it manifests in various ways. And so the teacher or the facilitator in this case will know that the learners have conflict, either fights amongst themselves, or it can even manifest in different ways of learners just being up to some mischief all the time. So,
en partie ce qu'on vient déjà d'échanger.
Okay, there's a lot of interference.
Yes.
Is that a translation?
Mr. Dallo, please,
Sorry.
can you mute your mic off? Yes, please proceed, Olivia.
Yes, so I want to suggest the use of reflective journaling. the use of reflective journaling, where a teacher can encourage learners to maintain a reflective journal where they write their classroom experiences. And when the teacher then gets an opportunity to look into these journals, he or she can understand the level of peace, so to speak, that the learners have attained. So reflective journaling is a powerful tool that teachers can use. Either every evening or on a weekly basis, learners can put down their thoughts, share their experiences in the classroom or even at home. And this will give the teacher an opportunity to really have an in-depth understanding of their learners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Marova or Professor Nian, do you have something to add on it?
Juste, moi, je voudrais juste ajouter et vraiment mettre l'accent sur ça. Je pense qu'il s'agit pour nous, enseignants, d'exploiter plus que créer. Je m'explique. Il y a beaucoup d'opportunités qui sont là, des ressources qui sont là, dans l'environnement, dans le contexte et tout cela. Mais peut-être qu'on perd de vue des ressources auxquelles on ne fait pas attention. Donc, ce n'est pas tellement créer l'environnement, c'est exploiter cet environnement qui est là, avec plein de potentialités, de ressources. Je pense qu'il faudrait peut-être insister sur cet aspect-là d'exploitation, plus que de créer, ex nihilo comme on dit, bon, mais exploiter ce qui existe au mieux, et la pédagogie transformationnelle peut nous y aider. Mais comme toute innovation aussi, il y a cette gestion de la question pendante, la gestion du stress avec, mais bon, ces méthodes en ligne, bon, je pense que de plus en plus, les étudiants et les enseignants vont s'habituer à ce contexte-là et gérer. Mais il faut de la facilitation. Je pense que c'est parfaitement possible et souhaitable aussi. Merci.
Thank you very much, Professor Nian. Dr. Marova.
I think the questions have been well taken as well, but probably regarding how transformative pedagogy can be, how we can mobilize fellow teachers and communities towards transformative pedagogy. I think the whole thing starts with us as individuals. Once we have this appreciation that no, this could be a better way of doing what we are doing, then we are the very people who should be preaching the gospel. And expecting someone from somewhere to start, advancing that type of practice, it may also be an indicator that we have not yet been transformed ourselves. Because once we are transformed, the next thing is we want to take action. If you take note quite well of the various tenets of transformative pedagogy, it should lead to empowerment. It should lead to critical engagement. So once we understand what we are supposed to be doing, I know that people start complaining about, we need money in order for us to mobilize this and that. Yes, money is needed, but we can start at a very small scale by doing it within our own context. Then we can always expand from there. So the best way to mobilize is to start from where you are placed. Where you sit or where you stand is the right place to start the mobilization from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marova. I can see Marwan raising his hand, and if you are hearing us, Marwan, and if you want to say something, the floor is yours. Marwan.
I could say this in the meantime, Jerusalem.
Okay, please.
I think it's also important to have policies, structures in place policies that support transformative pedagogy. Because if there's need for space, if there's a need for bigger classrooms where activities can happen, then this has to respond to policy issues. So there's need for governments across Africa, for instance, to put in place relevant policies that can support transformative pedagogy. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. And Marwan is not responding, so and we are also a bit behind of time. And just to support what you have raised, and also to see it as a response from one of our colleagues from Uganda, Hilary. She gave us a very good practical example on how they deal with it at the University of Makerere. So I quote what she wrote on the chat, and she said, "I think the issue of limited resources is one of the key concerns. But I think institutions of learning need to engage with service providers to ensure that no learner is left behind. For example, for us at Makerere, the university developed online platform where students can find study materials, engage with telecommunications companies so that students can access these materials without data. Institutions can also use blended techniques to teach via Zoom, email, Big Blue Button, simulation, etc. Institutions can also sign memorandum of understanding with service providers so that students can access data on credit and pay as part of tuition. It calls for collective effort. And thank you, Hilary, for this message also. And I think time is against us now. So there are lots of interesting issues on the chat, but we will share the videos and the links and every material that we use today through the email. And now I hand over to Salu for conclusion. Salu, over to you.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Allô?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Merci beaucoup, Jérusalem. Merci beaucoup, chers participants. Comme Jérusalem l'a dit, les échanges étaient très intéressants, mais malheureusement, on ne peut pas prendre en charge tous ces échanges-là, toutes les questions, parce que nous sommes vraiment limités par le temps. Je voudrais remercier toutes les participantes et tous les participants pour vraiment, excusez la répétition, la participation active et les échanges un peu plus fructueux. Mais donner une mention spéciale à nos éminents panélistes qui nous ont régalé, c'est le mot, à travers des présentations riches en informations et qui sont toutes basées sur des expériences vécues ou bien qui sont le résultat d'études scientifiquement menées. Nous retiendrons que pour la mise en œuvre de la pédagogie transformative, pour que cette mise en œuvre atteigne son objectif, il nous faut opérer des changements qualitatifs sur nos approches pédagogiques, en centrant davantage nos enseignements qui peut être opérationnel.
Very important regarding the operational part of the
l'autonomisation des jeunes et leur contribution efficace
pedagogy.
Dans le même sens, en évitant à adopter
related to Dr. Olivia spoke in the same way, mentioning the steps related to the 21st century, mentioning room to Zoom transmission. It must be an opportunity to grasp and not a difficulty. That's why we have to get deeper into
de cet événement. Merci à vous et à très bientôt.
Thank you all. Thank you, Salom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Awon. Thank you for joining us.
Merci.
Merci
you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Merci beaucoup à tout le monde.
Thank you very much.
Merci et à la prochaine.
Au revoir, professeur. Merci.
Dr. Olivia.
Salut, merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Au revoir.